He was 41, sailing alone off the coast of Bar Harbor, Maine, when something impossible drifted beside his boat. A glowing green bottle, bobbing silently in the moonlit tide. There were no markings, no label, just a strange pulse of light from within, too steady, too deliberate to be natural. At first he thought it was a trick of the sea, but when he uncorked it, a voice whispered from inside. It said his name, not once, not twice, repeatedly, urgently, followed by a chilling account of an accident, one that hadn't happened yet. When authorities later reviewed the audio, they couldn't explain the origin. There were no radio waves, no sender, and no logical reason why the voice matched a living person. What would you do if the ocean whispered your name? Would you change course, or dare fate to prove it wrong? Subscribe to hear more stories that defy explanation. Jonathan Rees had spent most of his adult life on the ocean. At 41, he was lean, weathered, and quiet, the kind of man whose words felt measured by the tide. Locals in Bar Harbor, Maine, knew him simply as Rees, the sailor with the rust-colored sloop called the Tide Caller. He wasn't a commercial fisherman, nor a tour guide. He sailed because the ocean was the only place that ever made sense to him. On land, things were loud, disjointed. People spoke too much and meant too little. But on the sea, things were clear. You watched the weather. You trimmed your sails. You moved with the current or fought it. Simple. It was early September when he decided to take one last solo voyage before the bitter Atlantic winds made sailing dangerous. He stocked enough food and water for a week and set course northeast toward Grand Manan, following a path he'd taken dozens of times. The weather was calm, skies a pale blue smeared with drifting clouds, and his mood matched the serenity of the water. It was supposed to be just another peaceful voyage. 3 days in, around dusk, something caught his eye. It was the light that did it, a soft emerald shimmer floating a few yards off the starboard side. At first, he assumed it was bioluminescent algae, the kind that sometimes flared when disturbed. But it moved against the current, deliberately, and held a consistent glow. Curious, Rees slowed the boat and leaned over the side, gripping a hooked pole. He extended it toward the light, and when the hook touched it, the object clinked like glass. It was a bottle, thick, antique-looking, maybe even hand-blown, with subtle ridges and bubbles in its surface. The glow pulsed from within, soft but insistent, like a heartbeat beneath glass. He hauled it aboard. Up close, the bottle felt warm, not hot, but like it had been sitting in the sun, despite the cold breeze that had settled over the water. It was sealed with a black cork, worn and partially cracked but secure. There were no notes, no carvings, no barnacles, nothing to indicate where it came from or how long it had been drifting. But that glow, it never dimmed. Rees turned it over in his hands, listening. No sloshing, no rattling, just silence, except for the hum of wind across his sails. He placed it on the bench beside the wheel and stared at it. That's when it happened. The glow began to pulse faster. He instinctively stepped back. It was still just a bottle, he reminded himself. Probably some novelty or prank someone had tossed overboard. But something about it felt wrong. Not dangerous exactly, just deeply out of place, like a whisper at a funeral. Eventually, curiosity won. Rees pried the cork loose and braced himself. There was no smoke, no burst, just a click, and then a voice. At first it was distant, muffled like an old cassette struggling to play. But it grew clearer. It was a man's voice, calm, deliberate. It said only 2 words at first. Jonathan Rees. Rees's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't a greeting. It was a recognition. Jonathan Rees, you're sailing east 34 miles off Machias Seal Island. The voice continued. At 7:12 p.m., you saw this bottle. Rees's eyes darted to his wristwatch. 7:12 p.m. exactly. You're wondering how this is possible. You're not crazy. You're not dreaming. But you need to listen carefully. The voice went on to describe something he hadn't experienced, but every detail was eerily plausible. A squall rising quickly from the southeast. Mechanical failure in the auxiliary engine. A rogue wave. The boat capsizing. And then silence. Rees stood there, holding the bottle, frozen. What disturbed him most wasn't the calm way the voice spoke, or the fact that it knew his name. It was the way it ended, with nothing. No instructions, no signature. Just a slow fade into silence, like the tape ran out, or the speaker simply walked away. The glow in the bottle dimmed. then extinguished completely. Reese set it down carefully, unsure if it had just given him a warning, or something else entirely. The wind picked up. Clouds had begun gathering without him noticing. The horizon darkened in the east. He hadn't checked the weather report that morning. Reese scrambled to the navigation panel, flipping on the radio to get a marine forecast. Static. He adjusted the frequency. More static. He reached for his backup receiver. Nothing. Even the GPS was struggling, its signal flickering between updates. He tapped the screen, but it froze. That's when he remembered the voice saying, "Mechanical failure." His heart pounded now. He went below deck and tried the auxiliary engine. It stuttered, then stopped. He tried again. Nothing. Back on deck, the wind had shifted, stronger, colder. The sails strained slightly, and he saw choppy water rising on the horizon, exactly from the southeast. The voice had been right. Panic flickered in his chest, but he forced it down. Reese wasn't easily rattled. He'd handled storms before. He'd been caught in worse weather, but never with this weight sitting on his chest, this creeping certainty that something bigger was happening. He made a decision then. He wasn't going to wait and see if the rest of the recording came true. He adjusted course, heading northwest toward the coast, toward safety. Maybe it was all a coincidence. Maybe some elaborate joke or twisted experiment. But if someone went through all the trouble of getting that message to him, and it was true so far, then what if the ending was true too? 2 hours later, as he neared the coastline, Reese looked back. The storm hit the exact area he'd just left. Radar later confirmed a freak squall, winds over 60 mph, and a rogue wave large enough to topple most sailboats. There were no other vessels in the zone at the time. No distress calls, no wreckage. But if Reese had stayed, he might not have been here to tell the story. He docked in Bar Harbor that night under a sky full of stars. The bottle sat in the corner of the cabin, cold now, lifeless, as if its purpose had been fulfilled. And Reese, for the first time in years, didn't know whether he felt safe or cursed. The next morning came with a gray hush over Bar Harbor. The clouds hung low, quiet and heavy, as if the storm from the night before had left behind more than just damp air. Reese sat at the edge of the dock on a folded crate, the green bottle cradled in a towel on his lap. It no longer glowed. It looked entirely mundane now, harmless, like any old piece of glass you'd find half buried in beach sand. But he knew better. He hadn't slept, not really. His mind replayed every word from the recording in the bottle, over and over, searching for signs, hidden meanings, subtle warnings he might have missed, the exact coordinates, the exact time, the tone in the voice, the prediction of the storm and mechanical failure, both of which had proven uncannily accurate. It wasn't a coincidence. But what was it then? He had questions. Too many. Why him? Why now? Who could have made a message so specific? And how could they have known everything down to the second? The harbor master, Walt, wandered over mid-morning, steaming cup in hand. "You back already?" he asked, squinting toward the tide caller. "Didn't think you'd be in for another few days." Reese nodded absently, still staring at the bottle. Walt followed his gaze. "That yours?" "Found it in the water," Reese muttered. "East of Seal Island." Walt let out a low whistle. "Storm tore through there last night. Weird one. No warning, no chatter on the radio. Like it snuck in." Reese finally looked up. "It didn't sneak in. It was predicted." Walt raised an eyebrow. "Predicted?" Reese hesitated. He wanted to tell someone, to unload this thing, but he didn't want to sound like a lunatic either. He opened the towel, showed Walt the bottle. "It was glowing," he said. "Last night, before the storm hit." Walt peered at it skeptically. "Looks like regular old sea glass to me." Reese gently shook his head. "It had a recording inside, a voice. It said my name. It described what would happen, everything. It told me to change course." Walt frowned now, not with mockery, but with genuine confusion. "You sure you weren't just tired? Sea can mess with your head when you're out there too long." Reese didn't answer. There was no point arguing. Until someone heard it themselves, they'd never believe it. He decided he needed to know more. Not just about the storm or the voice, but about the bottle itself, where it came from, what it was made of, if it had been tampered with, or, somehow, engineered to contain an impossible message. He packed it carefully, wrapped in the same towel, and drove inland to a friend he hadn't seen in over a year. Her name was Dr. Miriam Clark, a materials scientist who worked at a small private lab in Bangor. They'd met during a boating seminar years ago. Miriam was brilliant, skeptical by nature, and someone Reese trusted with things he didn't understand. She raised her eyebrows when he showed up at her office, holding what looked like a souvenir. "You want me to run tests? On a bottle?" "It's not just a bottle," he said quietly. "I need to know if someone rigged it, if there's a speaker or some kind of micro device inside." Miriam took it without hesitation, always intrigued by a puzzle. She ran it through a preliminary scan, X-ray, then infrared. What they saw made both of them sit back. There was no speaker, no electronics, no wires, batteries, chips, or components of any kind. The bottle was solid glass, no hollow chamber, no inserts, just fused silica from top to bottom. "Then how?" Reese began. Miriam shook her head. "I don't know, John. Unless someone figured out how to encode sound into molecular structure. This thing's impossible." The word hung between them. Impossible. She looked at him more carefully now. "Where did you say you found it?" "Floating. No markings, just light. And a voice." "Could you record the audio? You still have it?" Reese winced. "I tried. After I opened it, it went dark. No glow, no sound. It hasn't done anything since." They sat in silence a long moment. Then Miriam leaned forward. "I know someone who might want to hear this. He's a historian, specializes in maritime artifacts. Might help us figure out if this is a hoax or something else." Reese agreed. The bottle stayed with Miriam, who promised to keep it safe until further testing could be done. But as he drove back to Bar Harbor, a new thought crept in, uninvited but persistent. If the bottle warned him about the storm, could there be another message waiting? He checked the tide caller from bow to stern that night. Every crevice, every compartment, every inch of wood and metal. No other messages, no more glowing lights, just the soft groan of the boat rocking against the pier, and yet he felt watched. Not by people, not even by something external. It was the kind of awareness that lived in the marrow, a sensation that some unseen current was moving around him, just beyond perception. That night, he had a dream. He was back at sea, except the sky above was pitch black, no stars, no moon. The water was smooth as glass, and in the center of it all, floating motionless, was the green bottle, glowing brighter than ever. He reached for it, but the moment his fingers touched it, a scream erupted from inside. Not his name this time, not a voice of warning. A scream, raw, human, terrified. He jolted awake, drenched in sweat. The bottle still wasn't glowing, but now he knew it hadn't finished what it came to do. He returned to Miriam the next day, this time with more questions. Had the materials changed? Any signs of tampering or internal shifts? She looked pale when he arrived. "I sent photos to my contact in New York," she said. He forwarded them to a guy who specializes in anomalous ocean finds. He said there was a report from the 80s. A Japanese trawler found something similar off the coast of Alaska. Same glow, same temperature irregularity, but they didn't open it. What happened to it? No one knows. It disappeared from the lab 3 days later. No records, no witnesses. Gone. Reese felt a chill roll down his spine. This wasn't a one-time event. It wasn't a random anomaly. Someone, or something, was sending these bottles, and not all of them were being opened. Or perhaps, not all of them wanted to be. That night, after returning to his boat, Reese sat on the deck under a cold, starless sky and did something he rarely did. He recorded his own message, to whoever had sent the bottle, to whatever force had warned him. He described the voice, the storm, the moment he changed course, and then he said simply, "Thank you, but I want to know more. If there's another message, if this was meant for something bigger, I need to understand." He placed the recorder inside an old mason jar, sealed it tightly, and lowered it into the water. It sank slowly, disappearing beneath the waves. He didn't know if it would reach anyone or anything, but it felt necessary. Somewhere, he believed, the ocean was listening. What would you do if the sea spoke your name? Would you listen or ignore it? Do you think Reese was chosen for a reason, or did he just get lucky? Let us know what you think in the comments. Have you ever experienced something that warned you before it happened? Tap the like button if you enjoy mysterious stories like this one, and subscribe so you never miss the next tale that blurs the line between reality and the impossible. And tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We'd love to know. 2 days passed before Miriam's contact arrived in Bar Harbor. His name was Dr. Alan Vickers, a maritime historian and expert in anomalous navigation events, formerly affiliated with NOAA before stepping into private research. A tall man with weathered features and sharp gray eyes, Vickers had a reputation for taking fringe phenomena seriously, but only if the evidence held up. He didn't chase ghosts. He cataloged them. Reese met him at Miriam's lab, where the green bottle was now encased in a vacuum-sealed chamber, still cold to the touch, still dark. "No more light?" Vickers asked, eyeing the bottle through the glass. "None since it went dark the night I opened it," Miriam replied. Vickers nodded slowly. "That matches the description from the Alaska incident. There was a brief glow, an audio anomaly, and then nothing, like it expends all its energy in one message." Reese leaned forward. "You think there are more out there?" Vickers smiled faintly. "I don't think anything, Mr. Reese. But I've cataloged 14 similar cases over the last 60 years, from the Gulf of Mexico to the Norwegian Sea. Not always bottles, but always glowing containers, always found by individuals alone, and always containing a voice." Reese's pulse quickened. "They all heard something?" "Most did," Vickers said. "A few were too afraid to open them. One case in the Aegean Sea involved a woman who claimed the voice warned her of a volcanic eruption near her island. 2 weeks later it happened. She left Greece and never returned." Reese glanced at Miriam, then back at Vickers. "So we're talking about what? Time travel? Alien tech? Some kind of deep ocean intelligence?" Vickers didn't blink. "I don't speculate until the data forces my hand. But what I can tell you is this: these containers aren't new. The materials are often decades old, sometimes older. The glass in yours, for example, it's pre-World War II. We dated the silica in the base, somewhere between 1920 and 1935. Reese's throat tightened. He'd found it in 2025. "But there's more," Vickers added. "The voice. We isolated your recording. Miriam did a fantastic job preserving the timestamp from the night you played it. We analyzed the modulation, accent, and speech patterns." "And?" Reese asked. Vickers looked at him with a strange intensity. "It's your voice, Mr. Reese." Reese froze. "That's not possible. It's an older version of you, maybe 15 years. Slower cadence, slight rasp, but it's unmistakable. We ran it through Vocal ID software, 99.8% match." Reese backed away slightly. He felt the lab spinning. "No, that can't be right." Miriam placed a hand on his arm. "John, I heard it too. I didn't want to say anything, but it sounds like you." It didn't make sense. He had no memory of ever recording such a message. No knowledge of anything like this. Unless he hadn't made it yet. Vickers spoke gently now. "I believe what you received was a message from your future self." "Why?" Reese whispered. "Why would I do that?" "To save yourself," Vickers said. "Or someone else." The air in the room felt thicker now, like they'd pierced something fragile and invisible. A truth that had been floating just out of reach was now brushing against their fingertips. "I want to do something," Reese said suddenly. "I want to go back. Same path, same time of day, same coordinates. Maybe there's another message. Maybe it's not over." Miriam looked alarmed. "John, that storm was real. You could have died." "I didn't," he said, "because I listened. Now I need to understand." Vickers nodded slowly. "I'll come with you." They set sail the next morning. The weather was calm, like before. The water shimmered beneath a pale sun, clouds curling softly along the horizon. The tide caller cut clean lines through the sea, its sails snapping gently in the breeze. Reese steered them toward the spot, 34 miles east of Machias Seal Island. He had logged the coordinates, cross-checked them with tidal drift. This was where he'd found the bottle. He cut the engine. The sails went slack. They drifted. Hour after hour passed. Miriam, back on land, monitored their GPS and maintained regular radio check-ins. Nothing strange occurred, until just past 7 p.m. The water went still, too still, like the surface of a lake before a lightning strike. Reese and Vickers stood on deck, scanning the sea. The light was dimming. Shadows lengthened. Then they saw it, about 20 feet off the bow, a flicker of green. Another bottle. It floated gently, turning in lazy spirals. Reese didn't hesitate this time. He launched the pole, hooked it, and reeled it aboard. It looked nearly identical. Same shape, same glow. Except this one wasn't sealed. There was no cork, just a heavy wax covering the mouth, partially broken as if someone had tried to open it before. Inside, something shimmered. Not just light. Movement. Vickers leaned closer. There's something alive in there. Reese felt a jolt of cold shoot through him. He uncapped the bottle. This time, the voice came immediately. It was clearer, sharper. Not just a recording, but a conversation. "Reese," it said, "don't trust the man beside you." Vickers straightened, his eyes narrowing. What did it say? Reese didn't answer. The voice continued. "He'll ask you to bring the bottle to the lab. Don't. He works with them. He wants it for the wrong reasons." "Stop," Vickers said sharply. "Play it again." The bottle went silent. The glow dimmed. Reese held it tightly. His heart was thundering in his chest. He looked at Vickers. "Who are you working for?" Vickers hesitated. "Reese, I came here because I believe in finding the truth. I'm not your enemy." "But you didn't tell me everything," Reese said. "You knew this would happen." Silence. Then Vickers said something that chilled him. "I didn't bring you here to find another message. I brought you here because the last person who received a second bottle never made it back." Reese stepped back instinctively. That person, was it the woman in Greece? Vickers shook his head. No, it was someone else. A man who vanished near the Azores in 2008. His boat was found. He wasn't. Reese clenched the bottle, every instinct screaming now. "What's in this?" he asked. "What's really in this?" Vickers didn't answer. Suddenly the boat lurched. Not a wave, not wind, a mechanical tremor. Reese ran to the controls. Dead. The engine had stopped. The backup batteries, offline. Vickers stepped forward slowly. "They don't like it when the second bottle is opened." Reese turned to him. "Who's they?" But Vickers only stared at the bottle, his face pale. "They've been trying to speak to us," he said, "for decades. Through time, through water. Each bottle is a thread, a warning. And every time we get too close to understanding, someone disappears." Reese stared at the sea. The horizon was shifting. Not visibly, but conceptually. He could feel it. Something was coming, or something was already here. Then the voice returned. "Throw it back, Reese," it said softly, "before it's too late." But it wasn't his voice anymore. It was Miriam's. "Would you have opened the second bottle? What do you think is really behind these messages? Is time warning itself? Or are we being watched? Let us know in the comments. We read everyone. And please, give this story a like if it kept you hooked, and subscribe for more eerie, mind-bending tales from the edges of reality. Also, don't forget to write where you're watching from. It helps us connect with all the mystery lovers across the world. Reese stood frozen on the deck of the Tidecaller, the second bottle clenched in his hand. The voice that had just spoken, calm, deliberate, was unmistakably Miriam's. But she wasn't here. She was miles away in her lab in Bangor, presumably still monitoring their radio signal. "Throw it back, Reese, before it's too late." The words echoed inside him, louder than the sea, louder than the wind. Vickers stepped forward, cautious. "Don't listen to it." But Reese wasn't looking at Vickers anymore. He was staring at the water, because something had changed. Beneath the surface, where the bottle had floated moments earlier, was now a faint green glow. It was spreading, fanning out, like veins of bioluminescence snaking through the ocean, moving too deliberately to be a natural phenomenon. "What is that?" he muttered. "I don't know," Vickers replied, "but we shouldn't stay here." The engine still wouldn't respond. The instruments remained dead. The compass spun lazily, offering no direction. Reese moved to check the radio, but Vickers grabbed his arm. "Reese, think. Whatever that thing is, it knows us. It predicted this. If we try to send a signal now, we don't know who or what might respond." Reese yanked his arm free. "We're stranded in the middle of the ocean, and something just hijacked a bottle to speak in her voice." He ducked into the cabin, flipped the emergency power switch, and triggered the manual distress beacon. A red light blinked faintly. Some backup juice remained. At the very least, someone might trace their position, but part of him doubted they'd get here in time, or that they'd even be allowed to arrive. Back on deck, the green glow below had begun to rise, slowly, carefully, as if watching, calculating. "I'm throwing it back," Reese said, holding up the bottle. "No," Vickers said quickly. "If it wanted to be thrown back, it would have disappeared already. This is a test. It's always a test." "How do you know that?" Because the last man who didn't throw his back, his ship was found, burned from the inside, electronics fused, hull intact but scorched like it had been microwaved. Reese looked at him sharply. You said he disappeared. Vickers didn't answer. Now the glow reached the surface. It wasn't one source. It was many. Shapes, humanoid but indistinct, danced just beneath the waves. Not swimming, floating, watching. Reese's fingers tightened on the bottle. You lied to me. I didn't lie, Vickers said. I protected you from too much at once. The first rule in these kinds of phenomena, if you understand too much too quickly, you're a threat. They act. Who are they? Vickers exhaled. I don't know, but I think they've always been here, in the depths, watching, waiting, guiding certain people at critical moments, those they think can handle it. Why me? I don't know that either. But they chose you. Reese looked down at the bottle again. It was glowing. Not green now. Blue. The wax cap had begun to melt. And from inside, a faint hum vibrated against his skin, like the deep thrum of a ship's engine underwater. Except there was no ship, no motor, just that sound and the strange rhythmic pulsing of light. Reese set it gently on the deck, stepped back, and waited. The wax collapsed in on itself. The bottle opened. And then a light, pure, cold, and utterly silent, projected upward from within, like a column slicing the night in two. The wind stopped. The air stilled. And then a new voice began. Female. Calm. Emotionless. Jonathan Reese, your first deviation altered a pattern. The voice had no accent, no breath, as if it weren't spoken aloud, but printed directly into his mind. You were not meant to survive the event on September 14th, 2025. Your continued existence introduces variables. Reese stared at it, his pulse roaring in his ears. What variables? He whispered. The light pulsed. The trajectory of your survival initiates contact with 3 nodes. Miriam Clark, Alan Vickers, and an unknown anomaly. Vickers flinched. What anomaly? The voice ignored him. These nodes create instability. Then it stopped. The light vanished. Silence fell like a stone. Reese bent over, breathing hard, as if something heavy had been removed from his chest. Then the sea beneath them shifted again. A shape began rising. Not a wave, not a creature, a structure. Black, angular, ancient, etched with patterns that made no sense, like carvings from a language both alien and familiar. Water poured off its edges as it breached the surface, maybe 30 feet across. A dome or vault of some kind, made of a metal that shimmered like obsidian and pearl. Reese stepped forward, hypnotized. They're showing you, Vickers said, voice hoarse. They never show. They always hint, warn, whisper, but they never reveal. The bottle pulsed once more. A final message flickered from within. You have seen the gate. What you choose now will determine what remains sealed. Then silence again. And slowly, the bottle dimmed. The structure, what Vickers had called the gate, began sinking back beneath the waves, as silently as it had emerged. Reese stood frozen. They hadn't asked him to destroy the bottle. They hadn't asked him to stop. They had offered a choice. What do you think they meant? He asked. Vickers shook his head, stunned, that whatever's under that ocean floor isn't just sleeping. It's waiting, and it's bound by rules, ancient ones. Reese turned back toward the cabin, began scribbling down every detail. The shape of the gate, the carvings, the sound, the light. He couldn't afford to forget anything. Not a line, not a pulse, because someone would need this knowledge if he disappeared, if he was taken. They returned to shore the next morning. No one had noticed their distress call. No signal had reached Miriam. To the world, it was as if the tide caller never went missing. Reese went back to Miriam's lab that afternoon. She listened, said nothing for a long time. Then, quietly, "You're going to go back again, aren't you?" He nodded. "I have to." "Then you won't be the same," she said. "People who go past the second bottle, they start to change." "Change how?" "They begin to dream about the sea. But the sea in their dreams isn't water. It's time, and they swim through it until they're lost." Reese smiled faintly. "Then I guess I'd better hold my breath." That night he left a letter behind, addressed to no one, just a warning, wrapped in a question. What lies beneath us that wants to be found, but not freed? If you found a glowing bottle in the ocean that spoke your name, would you open it, or would you throw it back? Let us know in the comments. What would you have done? And where are you watching from? We love seeing this community grow across every corner of the globe. Smash that like button if you're still gripped by this mystery, and hit subscribe so you're the first to hear the stories the ocean tries to keep buried. Because next time, it could be your name in the bottle. 3 days later, Reese disappeared. No radio calls, no final logs, no distress signals. The tide caller was found adrift 46 miles off the coast of Nova Scotia. Sails torn, instruments dead, the cabin immaculate. No signs of a struggle, no blood, no clues. Just the faint smell of sea salt and oil, and the green bottle, resting on the galley table, perfectly centered. This time, it glowed blue. Miriam was the one who identified the boat after the Coast Guard recovered it. She stepped aboard silently, her breath shallow, heart pounding. Nothing had changed inside, except for the bottle. She didn't touch it. She only stared at it, feeling the low hum again. That frequency not meant for ears, but for memory. A vibration meant to summon more than sound. On the deck, a folded piece of paper had been tucked beneath the main sheet. Miriam unfolded it with trembling hands. One line. They called again. I have to see it. No name, no signature, but it was his handwriting. Reese had gone back to the coordinates, to the place where the ocean pulsed with an ancient intelligence, where the rules of reality bent like warm metal, and where something, older than maps, older than words, waited behind a black gate deep beneath the waves. Miriam took the bottle back to her lab, where it was sealed, documented, and placed in the vault. And then she made a decision that changed everything. She opened it. No cork this time, no wax. The top had already been breached. The light, though faint, was still there, flickering like a heartbeat on the edge of death. And then the voice came. It wasn't Reese. It wasn't her. It was a child. A little girl, barely 6, whispering her name. Miriam Clark. You still have time. The air turned cold. The lab lights flickered, and the green glow of the bottle swelled once, twice, and extinguished forever. That same night, Dr. Alan Vickers disappeared from his home in Connecticut. No signs of a break-in. His entire hard drive had been wiped. His files, gone. The only thing left was a single flash drive on his desk, labeled simply, Threads. Inside was a sequence of audio recordings, distorted, out of order. Some were voices, some were screams, some were silence punctuated by dripping water. But one clip stood out. It was Reese. Older, worn, almost changed. They're not warning us. They're mapping us. Every decision, every fear, every defiance, they study it all. The bottles aren't messages, they're keys, and we keep turning them. Then static. And finally, the last line. So faint it was nearly a breath. Don't open the third. But no one knew what the third was, or if it had already been opened. 6 weeks passed. Miriam quit her job. She vanished from all public databases. Her apartment emptied overnight. People whispered about what really happened aboard the tide caller, about the sudden rise in magnetic anomalies off the eastern seaboard, about rogue waves that moved against wind patterns, about sonar pings that returned impossible structures far below the ocean floor. And then, others began reporting green bottles. One was found off the coast of Iceland, another in the Gulf of Mexico. Each was identical in shape. Some were sealed, some were already open, but none were empty. Each one contained a message for someone, and the question was no longer why, but when. Because if the bottles were being found more frequently, it meant one thing. The gate was opening, and something was waiting behind it, watching, listening, deciding. So now we ask you, if the ocean delivered a bottle with your name, glowing faintly beneath the surface, would you open it? Or would you cast it back into the depths and hope that whatever's watching decides you're not worth noticing? Because once you've heard the voice, you'll never forget it. And once the bottle is open, you can never close it again. Are you brave enough to face what might be calling from the deep? Drop a comment below. What do you think was really inside that bottle? Would you have opened it? Have you ever felt like something was trying to warn you? Let's talk about it in the comments. And don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. We're building a global crew of curious minds and fearless explorers. If this story gripped you, please give it a thumbs up so more people can discover these oceanic mysteries. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story that may change the way you see the world and the water. Because next time, it might be your name that echoes from the bottle, and the voice might already be calling.